Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Want to remind you guys, if you've not done so already, please join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports that I am hearing. And the best part is you can ask questions, have one-on-one conversations with myself via text. It's a great way to interact with the show, support the show, and obviously be an insider when it comes to the BYU Cougars. So join us today. You get a 14-day free trial before you're paying anything, and it's just $5 a month beyond that to be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. So I hope that many of you will consider joining today. All right, coming up, let's talk about BYU basketball. Now, the biggest thing with Foussenyi Traore is he is a guy that has overcome his lack of height during his time at BYU and in college basketball. He is listed at 6'6", 6'7", depending on which roster you looked at during his time at BYU. And he is undersized for the position he plays, but being barrel-chested and having just absolute like go-go gadget arms, he has overcome all that and has been an effective role player for BYU, if not an outright star at times, as a member of the BYU basketball program. Dallin Hall was effusive in his praise about his teammate, and Dallin's been as close to Fouss as really anybody at BYU because they've had a pretty nice connection between the two of them during their time as Cougars. But he called him, quote, the most underappreciated BYU basketball player of all time, unquote. Is Dallin Hall right in that assessment about Big Fouss? Thinking about it, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of guys who have had some pretty solid careers at BYU that have been underappreciated. I think there are players that, for whatever reason, they aren't as flashy of a player as you would have liked him to have been. They don't have the pizzazz or the media savvy to make them a darling when it comes to the media. But I'm having a hard time arguing against what Dallin Hall is saying here. Because Fouss, all he has been is a stalwart for BYU. His performance this past week against West Virginia, for whatever reason, the Mountaineers are tailor-made for Foussenyi Traore to cook them. He had a 20-10 performance in his penultimate home game as a BYU Cougar. He is going to be one of the seniors honored on Saturday night against the University of Utah, and it's going to be the end of a pretty incredible career for a guy that, once again, I think Dallin's right. He's been underappreciated and overlooked at times as a BYU Cougar, but there's been other times that Fouss has been absolutely awesome. Remember, he had a bit of a lull earlier this season where he was having a hard time getting the ball in the basket. Just he was trying to get the ball in the hoop and was bouncing off the rim. All he has done, and that kind of is what it was, based on what I was talking with people about Fouss, is all he did is he went back to work, focusing on the fundamentals, his footwork, his touch around the rim, understanding it's all about timing and angles, and understanding what it takes for him to succeed in a game where he is undersized for the position he plays. And there's always going to be guys who are inches, if not long. It's just he has guys who could overwhelm him at times, and he has to overcome all that. And all he has done is work and work and work and produce at an absolutely high level during his time at BYU. So, yeah, I think Dallin Hall's got a point that Fouss may be the most underappreciated BYU player of his time, if not ever. And I think we're going to miss what Fouss brings to BYU when he's done playing for the Cougars. Yeah, Keba Keita, he has those memorable blocks. He'll go up and just absolutely swat the ball out of the air. He had one against West Virginia in the first 3 minutes of the game, and it was an absolute volleyball spike into the court. Could have deflated that basketball, it felt like, the way he got it. But his back-to-the-basket game, it is nowhere near the level of Foussenyi Traore. The other thing was that Dallin Hall said that the coaching staff in the locker room at halftime when BYU was struggling against West Virginia said, okay, two things, guys. Go to the rim, and if it doesn't work, get the ball to Fouss and get out of his way. All he did was respond with a 20-10 performance and put BYU on his back and led them to a big win over the West Virginia Mountaineers. Fouss is an absolute treasure. He has always been a fun dude to talk to. Comes from Mali, didn't have the background in English that many of you might have expected, but he has been really, really open to talking to anybody in the media based on what I understand. I've never had a bad interaction with the kid. He's humble. He deflects all attention to other players. I asked him Saturday night about his feelings about his 20-10 performance, and all he did say, hey, Dallin and Yegor, who were sitting next to him at the post-game interview, thanks to those guys for setting me up. That's the way he's been his entire career. And once again, when Fouss has done it in Provo, I think we're all going to miss a guy who put on for BYU. there were many times he could have easily left last year. When they brought in Keba Keita, he had to know that BYU is bringing in a guy who was going to take his starting job away from him. He easily could have said, you know what, that's it. I'm out. I'm transferring. I'm going to go find a program where I can play, I can start, and I can contribute at a high level. Nope, he didn't do that. He stayed loyal to BYU. And once again, the people I know that know Fouss said all he did is work harder and get after it even better and more than he already was. And he was already working at a really, really prodigious rate to become the best basketball player he could become. Fouss will likely end up playing overseas. He may get a shout when it comes to the NBA G League, but I love the fact that this is a kid who's become an ultra reliable player for BYU. Is there a guy outside of maybe a Richie Saunders right now, if BYU has the game on the line, you want at the free throw stripe than Foussenyi Traore? I didn't think so. He has been absolute nails for in a lot of areas for BYU, collecting rebounds, setting picks, being the pick and roll big when Keba's not on the floor. I love what Foussenyi Traore has been for BYU, and I think Dallin Hall may have been right on the nose when he said that he has been underappreciated. I I have to go back and look at more guys. I can think of guys that I think were underappreciated as BYU Cougars, but that's a personal opinion on the matter. And this may be a personal opinion from Dallin Hall, but those guys are in the trenches together. And Dallin, he knows good basketball players. And that's what Foussenyi Traore has been for years for the BYU Cougars. And I think we've all been lucky to watch his career play out the way it did. Not too often the guys these days stay loyal to a program for 4 and 5 years straight, but Fouss, he's got himself in the record books across BYU basketball, rebounding, scoring. He's got all kinds of records that he doesn't have the records per se, but he's on the record sheets and he's top 10 in a number of categories, if not top 5. And that's a credit to him and his just sticking with what BYU wanted him to become and ultimately living his dream as a BYU Cougar. So as we go into senior week, and obviously senior night will be Saturday night, I think we can all tip our cap to what Foussenyi Traore has been at BYU and thank him for everything he brought to the Cougars. And I don't think BYU's doing what they're doing right now due in part to what Fouss has brought to the table. He has been an invaluable piece of what has become an 11-man rotation for BYU, but really the front court, it's Fouss and Keba. And when Keba's not on the court, you have to have a reliable big man to come in and continue running what BYU's running. That's all Fouss has been. So, yeah, I think Dallin had a point when he made that point about Fouss, and a big thank you to Foussenyi Traore as he stares down the final regular season week of his career, his college basketball career. And here's to watching him continue to do what he's doing, wherever it might be, Europe, Asia, wherever he can play basketball. Fouss, I think he'll continue to be a productive basketball player because all he does is work. And that's a pretty strong legacy to have in your back pocket going out of a program that I think understands what hard work is all about. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Cougars. As always, thank you for all of your support. I mentioned it on social media that I had plans to do a postcast after the game on Saturday night. I probably should have mentioned this at the outset of today's show. Sat down to collect my thoughts Saturday night and very quickly fell asleep. Well, apparently I was more exhausted than I thought. So apologies for no postcast, but we'll have one of those tomorrow. We'll also preview Iowa State more in full tomorrow as we get you ready for that game out there in Ames. So big week ahead for BYU basketball. Can they get to the 4th seed and a double bye in the Big 12 tournament? Well, it's all on the table tomorrow as BYU heads to Iowa State. We'll break that down more tomorrow right here on Locked On Cougars.